Welcome to another episode of the Super Dynasty Bros podcast. My name is Ben, and I am joined here by the Luigi to my Mario. Austin, how's it going, man? Oh, and sorry, I should preface
I'm
that
doing
that's
well. How are
based
you?
all purely on height. So, Austin, I'm doing great, man. Um, I'm ready to talk like some crazy stuff for the draft this week, man. It's going to be a crazy week. Like you and I have just been seeing so much go on Discord, on X, on all over the social
Oh yeah.
media regarding the draft coming up this week. And I know that you and I have been waiting for this week for the last few months, at least since
Yeah.
since the Super Bowl ended.
I feel like this is one of the most fun weeks of the year.
Yeah,
Next week may be the most fun because you actually have your rookie drafts. But the this week leading up to the draft is always a lot of fun, and obviously the draft itself. But just a lot of the questions you get answered. You're going to have some amazing landing spots. You're going to have some devastatingly brutal landing spots, and everything we're talking about here can completely change if some
right.
people go much
Absolutely.
higher than we think or lower than we think. But it's so fun to speculate, talk about these
I
guys,
think the
figure out where
speculation
they
is the
land.
part that's like fun, and then it's also like completely grating on your soul because you're just like, I don't have an answer. Like, do I think that
Yeah.
RJ Harvey is worth a early second round pick versus a late third round pick? Like, those are the things that are going to hopefully get answered next week or at the end of this week. Right.
That's
Well, that's where I've been
that's a
seeing
pretty
him.
big
I've been
difference
seeing
right
him
there.
go. I think you and I
Yeah.
were in the real rookie draft for one of the actually funny enough the Dynasty
Mhm.
Trades in Five OG league. That you and I were in that rookie draft, and I ended up with RJ Harvey
Yeah.
at the 304. But I've been seeing him in mocks go between 2.4 to 2.8, and possibly even fall into the late third round. So
Yeah. It's super
yeah,
interesting the variance with a lot of these running backs. I mean, you know that some of these guys. I think I saw somebody. I forget who it was on X, but was just talking about like. Not, I think it may have even been Scott Connor saying like, not everybody's going to be a day two guy. Like we talk about all of these running backs, and like, oh, hopefully they go day two. Well, only
yeah,
maybe five or six of them are going to go day two. And a lot of people are going to end up being day three. A lot of everybody's favorite sleepers are going to be fifth and sixth round picks. And then you got to decide, do you believe in the talent or
yeah.
is this just a
That's
guy that's going to be buried on a depth chart and
right.
making
That's how I feel
53
about
man
some of the
rosters
wide
but never playing
receivers
his whole
right
career?
now. About like Alec Manor and Jalen Royals in my heart is going to go in this in the day two. But it's like you could ask yourself some of these questions, and I think they're going to get answered obviously, they're going to get answered. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. But like it's going to be a really exciting time at the beginning of
Yeah.
next week where there's just so many questions of okay, we saw Jalen Royals end up on the Cowboys. What do we do now? Or Trey Harris end up on the Cowboys, or Caleb Johnson is now on the Steelers. Like these are the things that are going to get those conversations started. And it's an exciting time in Dynasty.
And, and who's going to
Would
get
would you
who's
say?
going to get Zach Charbonnet? Who's going to get Zach Charbonnet? And I
Right.
said, who's going to get Zach Charbonnet? Where it's
Yeah,
like
yeah. Sam
everybody's all hyped
Darnold
up, and then
and
oh my
Zach
gosh,
Charbonnet
the
ended up getting
Seahawks.
traded to the Steelers for the first round. Yeah. So no, I mean we're not gonna watch that gets clipped and then we just get destroyed. Um, but no, it's gonna be a fun time, Austin. So this episode we're doing a two-parter. And this first episode, we're going to be covering the rookie QBs. This will get released on Tuesday, what today, the 22nd, and then we're doing also the rookie TEs, which will be getting released on Wednesday the 23rd. So we want to get this out to you guys as far as this information right before the draft. Austin and I have had a lot going on in our lives that I just had a kid. Austin's got his own stuff going on with his own family. So it's like we wanted to get this episode done for you guys before the draft, and we're finally able to do it.
Okay.
All right, so Austin, start us off the evening with your review about Cam Ward.
Yeah. So Cam Ward's an interesting prospect. I think that there's been a lot of talk about how he stacks up versus the class from last year. But I think pretty much everyone's in agreement that he is the number one quarterback in this year's class. I honestly haven't seen many takes with him anywhere other than number one. So, yeah. So he started off his career at Incarnate Word, which is interesting. It's a school that I know a lot of people probably haven't even heard of. In 2021, he had a big year, 4,600 yards, 47 touchdowns there, which led him to transfer to Washington State, where he played for 2 years. Um, Pretty solid. Averaged 3,500 yards and 24 TDs over those 2 seasons. Also had 13 rush TDs between the 2 seasons, so showed some rushing upside. But really, the reason why he's being talked about as the number one overall pick in this draft is his season last year at Miami. Um, After transferring a second time, he came out and put up 4,313 passing yards, 39 TDs, 7 interceptions, had 4 touchdowns on the ground, and actually also had a receiving touchdown, 44 total touchdowns, and around 4,500 total yards. So obviously very good stats. I believe he was a Heisman finalist. A lot of good stuff on tape. I think you start off the year with his performance against Florida, just absolutely calm and cool in the pocket. The way he was able to kind of break down their defense, like Florida would blitz, he would freeze, basically just stand completely still in the pocket, let a guy go by him, and then just run effortlessly for a first down or toss it down to Restrepo or to Arroyo. And the way he was just dicing up that defense. As a Gator fan, it was very frustrating to watch, but I was like, okay, this guy's going to be legit this year. And really, even in their losses, I believe Georgia Tech and Syracuse, he did everything he could do. It was just, shootout games that they lost, close games. But he came back in multiple deficits. They were down by 5 scores against California, I believe it was. I think they were down 35-10 at one point. So at least four scores. And they came back and won that game. Poised under pressure, makes all the big throws. The arm strength that he displays. There's a few other quarterbacks I think that maybe have slightly better arms than him in this class, but the way he's able to effortlessly throw it 60 yards through the air is really impressive. Puts it in all the right spots, gets it into some tight windows. There was some passes that he threw. I'm like, man, not many other quarterbacks could make that throw. Obviously, he has a great rapport with both Restrepo and Arroyo. I think it'll be interesting to see if the Titans want to, assuming the Titans take him at 1, which it seems like is basically a foregone conclusion at this point. But it'll be interesting to see if they want to bring in one of those guys in a later round, to see if they can keep that connection going, because I think that he definitely had something there. I think the biggest thing to me that stands out about Cam Ward is his ability to extend plays. So I think he's not your typical rushing quarterback. Like, I don't expect him to be a guy that rushes for 600 yards in the NFL. I mean, if that comes along, that just adds a whole nother floor to him. But I think that he's a guy that's going to be able to do enough to scramble out of trouble, to extend plays, to hit guys on the run. And that alone, I think, is something that really is important about the NFL game. Because he played against a lot of weaker defenses in the ACC. Even his previous seasons, he didn't play a lot against a lot of strong defenses. So obviously in the league, you're going to have a lot more aggressive pass rushes. So the ability to be elusive and get outside the pocket is going to be super important for him. I like him as a prospect. I think he's a guy that, it's hard to say he's like a super special talent. Like, he isn't a guy that's going to come in and be immediately a top 10 dynasty quarterback, at least in value, right after being drafted, I don't think. But the fact that he's going to get number 1 overall draft capital, will go to the team that's going to be committed to him, I think puts him in a spot where you can comfortably draft him in the first 3 or 4 picks of your rookie drafts and feel pretty comfortable with him as a QB2 for your team, right away.
Right. Austin, we were talking earlier about speculation. What do you speculate as far as the odds that it's Tennessee? Like, it's got to be like 95 to 99%.
Yeah, I think we're pretty close to 100%. I think the only thing that could possibly happen is some team unexpectedly makes the draft day call and offers just like too much for them to turn it down. But I mean, even the way he's talking, like in interviews when he's saying 2 best running backs in the league are Tony Pollard and Tajee Spears.
He didn't say that in an interview.
Best wide receiver in the league is Calvin Ridley.
He didn't say that in an interview. He said that.
He's the best wide receiver in the league is Calvin Ridley. It's like, you don't say that unless you know those
He
are going to
said
be your
that the
teammates.
2 best running backs were Tony Pollard and Tajee Spears, over a game of Fortnite.
Yes.
So
Yeah, so not an interview, but
no,
still, I mean,
that's
I don't
even
think he would have
funnier
said that
though.
if he wasn't.
Like, yeah, I just
Yeah,
love it. I agree. I think that Tennessee it's basically almost a lock.
yeah.
Um,
I think it's almost as much of a lock as Caleb was to Chicago last
yeah,
year at this
yeah.
point. I think we know it's going to happen.
But before we move on, because I know we have a little bit of a tight schedule, but where does he fit in with like the 102 versus Omarion Hampton? Like for me, even right now, if Omarion Hampton gets the first round draft capital that we might be expecting, a lot of times I'm still probably going to take the 101 QB in Cam Ward in a super flex league.
Yeah, I think it kind of depends. I think it's a big tier, really, like 2 through 8 or 9 is kind of a big
Yeah.
tier. If we find out that Travis Hunter is going to be playing primarily wide receiver, I think he's in the 102
Yeah.
conversation. I mean, Hampton, obviously. If I saw a mock today with Hampton going below Henderson, like Henderson went to the Broncos and Hampton went to the
Yeah.
Commanders, and I think in those situations, some people might even take Henderson over Hampton. So I think there's a lot of people that can kind of be in that conversation. I think as long as Hampton gets a good round one landing spot where it looks like he's going to be a starting running back, I expect him to typically be the 102 unless somebody is very QB
Yeah.
needy. But I expect Ward to usually be the 103 and be no lower than 104 in just about any
Yeah.
draft.
I mean, I do think there's a lot of people in the camp of like, I'm in a super flex league, so I have to take a quarterback over running back. And I think it's going to probably be
Hmm.
split 50-50 between Omarion
Yeah,
Hampton or Trevion Henderson, depending on who ends up the
yeah.
second RB off the board, potentially in that first round.
Yeah. I'll say for me, I just don't think he's enough of like a. I like him. I think he'll be a solid QB2 for fantasy. I'm not sure he's like a major difference
Yeah.
maker. And so I think I'd rather, in most leagues where I'd have the 102, I'd rather take a shot on Travis Hunter, Omarion Hampton, Trevion Henderson, even Ted McMillan if he still gets a high landing spot, depending on how that
Yeah.
plays out. I think it's looking more and more likely that he's going to not be a top 10 pick like we originally thought. But
Yeah. I mean,
there's a lot of guys that really, depending on landing spot, I think one of them at least will be a guy that's offers higher upside than Cam Ward. But I mean, it could happen. I just think that I wouldn't let him slide below. Like I said, I think 104 is probably the lowest I'd see him go, and I expect his ADP to probably be
yeah.
103.
Yeah. Now here's a guy that I do not see jumping up above, 104 or 103. But I think right now he's going at a value that is below, expectations for a first round quarterback coming out. And that's Shadur Sanders. Like Shadur is probably like the range of outcomes for him to end up in the top 10 is very likely. But then there's also a likelihood that he just falls and goes,
Hmm.
in the late first round to a team like the Steelers or I think people think that the Seahawks are right now not going for a quarterback because they signed Sam Darnold, but like they could sign somebody like a Jackson Dart or a Shadur Sanders to be in the wings, right? Um,
Yeah.
but Shadur is going to be an interesting guy to see how he climbs in rookie drafts after the draft happens because it's just I think people
Or
are just
falls.
holding their breath. Like, does he go in the early first round? Does he fall? What kind of system does he end up in? Because I really enjoyed a lot of the tape from Shadur. He's a great prospect from the sense that you know what you're getting with him. He is about as safe of a quarterback as you can expect. He's a great pocket passer. Um, doesn't really have a lot of rushing upside, but he can scramble and extend plays and make things happen. But to kind of start the conversation on Shadur, he was a four-star recruit coming out of high school. He actually amassed a high school career record of 47-5. And then when he left high school, went directly to Jackson State, where his dad was the coach. Dominated 2 seasons there. Led Jackson State actually to a 23-3 record in 2 Celebration Bowl appearances, which the Celebration Bowl is the same thing as the national championship for an
Mhm.
FCS school. Uh, well, actually, that's the HBCU basically version
Mhm.
of the national championship. He was a finalist for the Walter Payton Award, which is the top offensive player in FCS football. And in 2 years, he basically threw for almost 7,000 yards, 70 touchdowns, and 14 interceptions at Jackson State. Then his dad, Dion, takes the job at Colorado. And as to be expected, Shadur and Shiloh go to Colorado as well as multiple other Jackson State students and athletes on the football team. So it was a rough first year. They only won 4 games. The hype was high because again it's Dion. They're coming off of a 1-11 season the previous season, and so they started winning a couple of games at the beginning of the season, and then it just all went downhill. And I think there was a lot of work to be done still, and I think Dion's doing still a lot to help Colorado build the program up. But so in 2 years at Colorado, he had 13 victories. Of course, 9 of those came in this most recent season where he had a huge year. He was the Big 12 Player of the Year last season, and was just an amazing guy in the pocket. I mean, completed 74% of his passes, threw for over 4,000 yards and 37 touchdowns. He won the Johnny Unitas Award, and he's consistently progressed his accuracy every year that he's played in college football. As I said, we're kind of expecting that he's going to be somewhere in the early first or late second, but right now, generally, the big boards and the NFL analysts are just split on him as far as a prospect. I think he's tough and he's accurate. He can deliver the ball, to his receiver wherever he needs to. I think you're going to see some mixed reviews online, but for the most part, he has a cannon. I mean, he can toss the ball and get it deep to his receivers as much as he needs to. But the issue with Shadur is when the play breaks down, so does he. And while he's actually great, he doesn't turn the ball over a lot. He more so takes the sack, or he doesn't throw the ball away like he should. And so it ends up usually ending up in negative plays. And it was actually the bowl game against BYU that like 2 consecutive plays he gets sacked and they lose like 40 yards. So it's rough when you don't have an offensive line that can protect you. And I think
No.
if he is set up in the right system with the right team and the right coach, we could be talking about a guy who is consistently a QB2 for his career and a guy that you can just count on. I don't think he's going to have the ceiling of what Cam Ward can have, but I would love, similar to a Jared Goff or a Tua Tagovailoa, where maybe not Tua, but just give me a guy who's consistent. And actually, one of the players that he's being comped to right now is Geno Smith. Like that's a great comp. Coming out of college when he was at West Virginia, obviously he had a little bit of a roller coaster of a career, but we know what Geno is now and what he could have been had he been that way for most of his career. But if you can promise me that with
Mhm.
Shadur, I think I'm pretty happy with that. He's just a mentally tough guy. Here's the thing, right? He took 99 sacks in 2 seasons at Colorado. 99 sacks. And even in that like level of your offensive line is not protecting you, he still was able to
They're pretty bad.
achieve a PFF grade of 86.9 in a passing grade, which is third in the FBS at the time. He totes a 1.3% turnover worthy play rate, which is third amongst the draft eligible QBs. And the guy can throw on the move. Like I said, he can scramble. He can get the ball where he needs to. So he extends the plays to make things happen. But again, that can end up being the negative of taking a sack. And, he needs to learn how to either throw the ball to get it away, or either that or get the ball out of his hands quicker, because he was actually 110th in all of the FBS in regards to, it was like over 2.9 seconds of holding onto the ball after the snap, and you're going to end up going to the ground with the ball at that point. So I like Shadur a lot. I'm actually probably one of the
Hmm.
Shadur truthers in the sense that like I think there's a lot of people that are just downing his name just because he shares the name Sanders with his dad. So you know, people are questioning his leadership, his character, and all these things. I think people need to leave it alone. He is a leader. He has been a leader at Colorado and at Jackson State, and he's going to be a damn good football player, in my opinion.
All right, planting your flag there.
I,
I,
I after watching the
I
tape, I feel that strongly.
yeah. So I like Shador. I think it really comes down to whether an NFL team is going to give him the keys to their
Yeah,
franchise. And so I think if he goes to the Giants at 3, which is looking less likely, or even the Saints or the Steelers in the first round, and he's going to start right away. I still expect Aaron Rodgers to be in Pittsburgh, but we'll see. If Sanders is going to get an opportunity to start, I think he's worth a shot and has a good chance to do well. I just worry. I think a lot of the recent news is showing potential for him to have a slide, and if he ends up going late first, or a team has to trade back up in the first, or he ends up going sliding into the second, um, and teams don't have as much invested in him, I worry that it's going to be a much shorter
yeah,
leash. And I think he's a guy that's a pretty raw prospect that's going to take some time. And I think there's got to be a team that's willing to give him time. We've seen some awfully short leashes with some of these starting quarterbacks. You look at Trey Lance, you look at even Anthony Richardson, the benching and the restarting, and now they're already talking about possibly not starting him again after only a handful of NFL starts. So it's like the timing for some of these guys is very like you got to perform right
yeah.
away, and I just hope that a team is patient with him and gives him time to adapt to the NFL game because it just doesn't feel like he's ready to jump in right away and make. I could be wrong, but I just don't see him being a guy that's going to come in and just blow up the
Yeah.
league because he's so explosive as a
I
rookie.
I think there's you can say yes to both things on this, right? You can say that
Yeah,
he is an NFL caliber quarterback and also say that he's not going to blow up the league. And I think that's what Shedeur is.
yeah,
I don't think
I
he's
agree.
going to have
Yeah.
like a top 10 potential that like Cam Ward can have of the type of quarterback that he is. I do think that
Hmm.
Shedeur is going to have a solid NFL career, but
Yeah.
he's probably just going to stay a QB2 on your team. I mean, that's the reality. If you have
Hmm.
a Josh Allen or you have a Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, if you have Shadur as your QB2, I think you can probably feel pretty good about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of this is going to come down to draft capital
100%.
because if he slides and a lot of these running backs and receivers that people are excited about get good landing spots, he could end up being the very end of the first round or even 201, 202. That's why I think it's going to be very interesting. If he ends up going in the top 10 and Superflex leagues, he's probably going to be going before, I would say 107,
Yeah.
108 ish. But if he ends up sliding, there's a potential for a value there. There's a potential for a Bo Nix, Michael Penix like pick, like you had last year. And I think really the same goes for the next guy I'm going to talk about, which is Jackson Dart.
Yes.
So 6'2", 225. I actually had forgotten this until I went back and looked, but he actually started at USC and just basically played mop up time, didn't do much there, and then transferred to Ole Miss. So was at Ole Miss for 3 years. 4,600 yards, total yards, including rushing yards, and 32 touchdowns last year. Both 23 and 24, he had over 30 total touchdowns. Um, did really well in Lane Kiffin's offense. He's got a great deep ball. Really, I think underrated rushing ability. I think not a lot of people are talking about his rushing ability. He rushed for over 600 yards in 2022. Had 8 rushing touchdowns in 2023. And then last year, 495 and 3. So just pretty consistent on the ground. Has some, honestly, probably better rushing upside uh, than Sanders or Ward. He's very good at extending plays, kind of like I said with Ward. When the pocket breaks down, he doesn't panic. Ole Miss had a very fast-paced offense, and he really thrived in that system. And I think that if an NFL team wants to commit to Jackson Dart, I think they're going to have to really kind of adopt to the way he plays because I'm not sure I see him just being a drop back passer. I think he's going to need to be in a quick, kind of a fast paced offense, a college style offense if he's going to succeed. Because it's like the way Lane Kiffin ran things there is like perfect for him. But I don't know that he's going to be a traditional NFL quarterback. It's just going to have to be if you like the guy and you want to build around him, you're probably going to have to build an offense for him. Um, One of the downsides I saw with Dart is that he really can force balls that aren't there. So like he throws a lot of times like he looks for the home run when he could probably take a check down and can turn it over in big spots. And he really wasn't. I think one of the things that really stood out as far as a negative is that he had pretty poor performances when he went against better defenses. So he dominated against lesser competition, but in some of the bigger games against better defenses, so you think about the Georgia game, Ole Miss dominated the game. Their defensive line dominated. They completely shut down Georgia. But offensively, they could barely get anything going, and Dart really struggled against that Georgia pass rush. So I think there's some concern that he was a little bit of a stat merchant against bad teams. He was in an offense that was very conducive to piling up stats and to putting up big numbers. Um, and so there's some questions of is it a little bit is all of it are his numbers a little bit inflated? Does it have to do with being in the perfect offense that he might not get to see in the NFL? And I think all that is possible, but I do think that there is some, especially with the rushing upside, from a fantasy perspective. I think if he gets a starting job, I see a little bit of Bo Nix in Jackson Dart. I see kind of a he's a guy that can really sling it, but also has a good solid floor because he's going to rush for, I see him as a potential 500 to 600 rushing yard NFL
Yeah.
guy. So that creates a really solid floor where it's even if he's not spectacular, even if he's not a, even if he's not even a top 20 NFL quarterback, as long as he can get starts and continue to get starts, that rushing upside, I think is going to make him startable as a QB2 for as long as NFL teams are willing to let him start. So I think that creates a nice floor where if you can get him in the early second, assuming he is a first round NFL pick, like it's leaning towards, that could be great value for your team. And I think then once he starts and he has a couple good performances, that's a guy you can flip for a first and make an immediate profit, even if you don't really love Jackson Dart. And I think there's still upside that he becomes a solid NFL quarterback that lasts for a long time in
Yeah.
order.
I'm I'm just kind of concerned with Jackson Dart. There's just he because of the way that the Ole Miss offense was run. I mean, they played a lot of play action RPO, and basically he was
Hmm.
in that Lane Kiffin offense to basically take the first read, and he does it every time. But when it doesn't work out, that's when the picks happen, and you get like a 5 pick game that he had. I think that might have been against Georgia, but I mean, again, Georgia's also one of the top tier teams in the SEC. But how does
Yeah.
this translate into
Yeah.
the NFL? You take a guy that struggles when it comes to again that first read's not there. You're going to force the ball. Those NFL DBs are taking that ball every time. So
Yeah.
I'm just a little bit worried with Jackson Dart there, but I do think you absolutely kind of hit it on the head that it just kind of depends on who he ends up with and how much coaching he can get before getting into the game and maybe having a ceiling. I mean, I like the Bo Nix idea because a lot of people were also trashing Bo Nix right before the draft as well.
Yeah.
So a little bit of a different player, but at the same time, yeah, is there
Oh, yeah.
something that we're
Yeah.
just not seeing?
Right. And if we end up with a similar situation to last year where, you know, the starvation for QBs around the league drives up the price to where, wow, all of a sudden Jackson Dart is, pick 9 or 10, um, which I think is not outside of the realm of possibility. I think it could
Yeah,
happen. Then he ends up being a top 10 pick. Let's say he goes to the Saints, and I think they're picking 8.
I've seen some odds of it.
And and it looks like he'll start right away. I think all of a sudden that makes him a clear first round pick in dynasty rookie drafts.
Yeah.
So I mean that all of a sudden you're in a position where you're like, okay, this guy he's going to start right away. He's got a nice floor with the rushing upside. They bought on him from a draft capital perspective, so he's got a fairly safe. I mean, you'd think it seems like recently there's been shorter leashes on some of these guys, but as far as you can, fairly safe because of the draft capital invested. I think he definitely should not be out of the first round if that happens. So we'll see. I mean, if he drops out of the first round of NFL drafts, then it's kind of like Will Levis a couple years ago. It's like it's just it's a risk, and maybe you have a dart throw in the second round.
Yeah.
No pun intended, but yeah,
Yeah, I mean I think I'm probably gonna have like some shares of him just because I think you talk about a first round QB, you want a little bit of piece of that in case it does end
yeah.
up working out. Okay, so talking about Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers was the highest touted prospect coming out of high school since Vince Young in 2002. Actually, according to 24/7 Sports, he had like a perfect composite score according to their rating, and also the highest on Rivals.com ever, like since that point as well. And so he commits to Ohio State, red shirts there, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that was roughly around the time that Joe Burrow was there, or no, Justin Fields.
Yeah.
Justin Fields. And he transfers
Right,
to
right.
Texas, of course, his home state. And at Texas, he actually amasses the third best season for a quarterback all time. I think it was like something. If I'm yeah. So basically, the third best in regards to passing yards, touchdowns, and I think that was basically the stat there. But it was a pretty fruitful transfer in that sense. But I think there's a lot of concerns that we have about Quinn Ewers translating to the NFL. We saw a lot of issues, especially this last year, and I'm not a believer in Quinn Ewers at this point. I watched the tape, still not a believer, but he did have some games where he popped off and showed you, hey, this is actually why he was so highly regarded. I mean, he has the physical talent and capability to be an amazing quarterback. But when it comes time, push comes to shove, and he's in the game, when there's pressure, he's very erratic. Like there were some things in his tape that he just displays inconsistent mechanics. I mean, his lower body mechanics are erratic, often throwing flat-footed as he struggles to step into his throws. I think a lot of that ends up leading to when that happens with quarterbacks, they throw more picks. They end up tossing it right to the NFL secondaries, and it's not going to be a good thing for him if that's the case. He's got to clean that up a little bit. He struggles under pressure. So if the pocket ends up collapsing, he'll bail, and basically the play just falls apart there. He has to start making things happen creatively on his feet. He can stretch the field. He's got a great arm, a cannon. I mean, we saw it when I was watching some tape with Matthew Golden, and he was getting the ball to Matthew Golden down the field for long touchdowns, and it was something beautiful when it worked. The problem for Ewers is there's no consistency there, and he doesn't read through the field thoroughly, so he usually goes after his primary read, and similar to Jackson Dart, if it doesn't work out, he's gonna force the ball. He gets rattled real easily by the pass rush. So again, if the play breaks down, he has the tendency to turn the ball over. And his lack of poise against pressure shows in the regular season, especially against Texas and Georgia, where he had one of his worst showings of the season in that game, but not to be outdone by Carson Beck, who just looks even worse on the field. So, it was a high scoring game, but had nothing to do with the QBs. Is like both of them had like I think Quinn Ewers had one touchdown and one interception and completed like
Yeah.
26 of 40
I think
something
he struggled
passes.
in both games against Georgia. Yeah.
Yeah,
I played him twice and he struggled twice.
which Texas lost
Yeah.
both games. And the second game
Yeah.
in the SEC championship was a lot closer, but just not good. I mean, again, you're considering again, same with
Mhm.
Jackson Dart was playing against a top tier SEC defense. So, you start to see some of those
Yeah.
blemishes come across in the tape. Right now, I'm seeing Quinn Ewers probably going somewhere in day two. Hard to know if he goes as high as the early third round or late second round. And I think a lot of it's going to happen just based off of name recognition in the sense that, hey,
Yeah.
this guy was, again, the highest touted high school quarterback coming out in decades. So, can we turn him around?
Yeah, I think the pure talent is the interesting thing there.
Right.
Is just the fact that he's grades out so high. And he looked good in stretch. I mean, he had Texas in the semifinals back to back seasons, and so I think he did enough. Um, but yeah, there's a lot when you watch the tape. There's a lot of times you're like, man, he missed a lot of throws that should have been touchdowns. You wonder if there was a little bit of he felt Arch Manning breathing down his back, and it seemed like some questionable coaching decisions. Like kind of switching out the quarterbacks in the middle of games and putting Manning in and taking back out and putting Ewers back in. You wonder if some of that kind of got rid of the flow, like kept him from being able to get in good rhythm. I don't know. I mean, I just try to. It's kind of head scratching. You're trying to figure out why it didn't work. I mean, I guess it worked as far as Texas had success. I mean, Texas they were a play away from beating Washington to go to the championship game in 23, and then a couple plays away from beating Ohio State in the semifinal game. I mean, they were right there to potentially tie the game before you were sold it and was returned for a touchdown.
Yeah.
So they were definitely close, but it just felt like something was missing, and there's probably some NFL GMs and coaches out there that they're like, I I can fix this and I can unlock the talent that's there. So I do expect day two capital, but
Hmm.
there's just so much risk there. And if he wasn't a highly touted recruit, you just look at what he put on film in college and you're like, this guy's not an NFL quarterback. So I guess there is a high ceiling there. There's also just a bottomless floor.
Yeah.
So
I mean, like when you mentioned like a coach coming and be like, I can fix this. I feel like that stinks of like Brian Daboll and the Giants all day. Like we're trying to save our jobs. Let's grab a guy who, has the highest potential to like turn this around and just turn people's heads. Like everybody
right.
expected Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders to live up to their round one hype, but let's get Quinn Ewers in here and try and save this thing. No, it's not happening.
You never know.
Oh man.
Another guy I could see going to the Giants,
Right.
Jalen Milrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Leading into Jalen Milrow.
Uh, Yeah, and that's a guy that I also think is one of those where it's like the ceiling is incredibly high, but man, the floor is low. So 6'2", 225, 2 seasons as a starter at Bama, around 3,500 total yards each year. 23 passing touchdowns, 6 interceptions in 2023. 2024, however, 16 pass touchdowns, 11 interceptions. So you're like, wait, 16 and 11, how is this guy considered a top NFL prospect? Well, 726 rushing yards and 20 rushing touchdowns in 2024. He had 531 in rushing yards and 12 touchdowns in 23, but 20 rush touchdowns from a quarterback. Very impressive. That rushing upside is just unlimited. I mean, just to watch the way he runs in the open field, the way he runs away from top level athletes in the SEC. Um, Man, you watch this film from the LSU game. He had 4 rushing touchdowns, including 2 really long runs where he just looked blazing fast. I think you're seeing a guy that's like, from a rushing quarterback perspective, it is honestly some of the best film I've ever seen running the ball. It's a huge caveat, running the ball, because
Clip it.
there are major questions about his ability to throw. He's got a cannon, like absolute cannon. He can throw it a long way. but really struggles with consistency and accuracy. Even some of his, like if you watch a highlight package of his, even some of those like highlight throws, they are either, overthrown and the receivers dive for them, or they're underthrown. Like a receiver has to come back and catch them. It just seems like there's, even to wide open receivers, it's thrown a little behind or it's thrown a little past them, and they have to make an acrobatic play to get it. It just feels like there's something a little off with his touch, a little off with his accuracy that really needs to be refined because, like you said, those margins for error in the NFL are so much slimmer. You rarely have a wide open man. You're going to have the top level cornerbacks, top level safeties that are going to be crashing on those plays, and you're not going to be able to make the small mistakes and get away with it. So, I mean, even as it was, he had 16 touchdowns to 11 interceptions passing last year, which does not cut it in the NFL. And he's going to be facing even tougher defenses. But of course, the thing that really stands out is that rushing upside. I mean, he has Lamar level, rushing potential. The 726 yards and 20 rush touchdowns is incredible. He honestly, when you watch the way he runs in the open field, it reminds me a lot of watching Lamar at Louisville. So it's like a lot of teams are going to see that and be like, man, the ceiling here is unreal. I think that a better comp for him is probably somewhere between like Malik Willis, Anthony Richardson. Both of those guys, you just see the sky high ceiling. But neither guy has really gotten a fair chance. I mean, we saw some flashes from Malik Willis starting last year when Reed got hurt, or not Reed, Jordan Love. Sorry, Jordan Love got hurt. Um, we saw some flashes from Willis, but he didn't really get much of a chance in Tennessee, and Richardson's been, he's been benched and then started again, and benched, started again. So, if a team's willing to commit to Milrow and give him a chance, then I think he's got sky high potential. But I mean, he's got to improve as a passer, or he's going to have a hard time keeping a job. But there's been a lot of momentum for him, and I think that I expect him to go either somebody trade up into the first to get him, or go at the top of the second. And with that draft capital, I think there's a good chance that he does get a shot, and is a very intriguing, I think, second round startup pick if that's the case, because it's like you're taking shots at upside, and there's a ton of upside there. I mean, if he even if he's a terrible passer in the NFL, if he's rushing for anywhere close to the amount of rushing TDs he did in college, he's going to be a top 10 dynasty quarterback. I mean, that's legitimately, like, the upside is there. It's very similar to what you look at with Justin Fields over the last few years. Even the years he struggled, he still finished as a top 10 quarterback because of that
Mm-hmm.
rushing upside. So if a team gives him a chance to start, and the team's going to play him, like kind of like what I said earlier with Jackson Dart, where it's like when you've got that solid rushing floor, as long as they're playing, as long as they're getting in there, you have a very solid fantasy asset. It's just a matter of whether he can continue to stay on the field and continue to get starts.
Yeah. Yeah. I uh I don't know. That's really going to be the one for me. We were talking about it pre-show. Just landing spot, draft capital, if I even draft him at all. Because I just don't know that I
Hmm.
want any part of like this crazy wild card that we think that Jalen Milrow is right now. But if he
Yeah.
gets like day two draft capital and goes in the second round to a needy team, there's a place where he could be starting and getting you fantasy points right away, rushing the ball.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah, I mean, I think about Cleveland potentially. You're looking at, I mean, I think Joe Flacco would start, but it wouldn't surprise me if by midseason, if he was in Cleveland, he was the starting quarterback there. And then you never know. You never know where it goes
yeah,
from there.
Jalen Milrow tossing it to Travis Hunter.
Yeah, that would be something.
Oh man, but yeah, I we'll see. We'll see. I kind of think that the best way to approach it is you're taking an Anthony Richardson type quarterback. There's just so much risk. But like if you were to hit, you have a great starter on your team.
If he hits in Cleveland, he's tossing it to Travis Hunter. If he misses in Cleveland, he's tossing it to Travis Hunter in
There
practice as the
we
DB.
go.
As the
There we
DB.
go, Austin. So there's another guy that was being mocked to Cleveland in the second round, and we were just talking about it prior to the show with this as well, that had we done this show when we were supposed to, like over a month ago, that we might not even have had him on our list as high as we do, or even had been talking about him tonight at all. And that's Tyler Shuck. So Tyler Shuck, he's a dinosaur. We were just texting with MD just before we started the show, and I was like, this guy was the backup for Justin Herbert in his second season. So Tyler Shuck actually was a 4-star prospect coming out of high school in 2018. 2018. So that's now 7 years. So redshirted at Oregon in 2018, backed up Justin Herbert in 2019, and then started in 2020. And actually in 2020, in the COVID year, Oregon went 4-3, and he led them to the Pac-12 championship. Had some pretty good games when he was playing. But then he transfers to Texas Tech. And that's where it all goes downhill. When 2021, he fractures his collarbone. And he then has a shoulder injury in 2022, which limits him again. And then fractures his fibula in 2023. And over the course of 3 years at Texas Tech, plays 13 games. And over those 13 games, he amasses somewhere in the ballpark, I didn't include the stats, but around 2,000 yards with like 12 touchdowns. Had the guy actually play, like that's good for like a full season. He played basically a full season in 3 years. But the issue is he had just so many injuries. There were bright spots for him, but he didn't really ever get a full chance until this last year with Louisville when he comes in. Jeff Brom's the coach, and he gets an opportunity as a starting quarterback. And he broke out this year. Played all 12 games, posting career highs in passing yardage of 31.95, 23 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, and led the Cardinals to an 8-4 record. The guy is your prototypical size of quarterback. He's 6'5", 215 pounds. He's exactly what you want out of, similar to a Justin Herbert type or something along that size with that prototypical size. He's also got the arm talent. Like, he can toss the ball wherever you need it to go. He's got a cannon. He's got a live arm, so he can toss it, all angles of the field and get the ball to wherever he needs it to go to his receivers. And honestly, why we're even considering Ja'Cory Brooks is at some point, in our rookie drafts right now. So, he's capable of driving throws into tight windows at all 3 levels. His ability to manipulate arm angles and deliver off platform throws, especially in his games against Notre Dame and Virginia, is elite. Some of the things that I noticed with Tyler Shuck is just his experience. He had 32 career starts across multiple systems. So, you talk about Cam Ward, who played for 3 teams, and ended up being a 5th-year senior, or 6th year, I think, for Cam Ward. Anyway, 7 years in college football, plays for 3 teams, and has the experience. You can't toss that experience away. And I think that the NFL is treating it differently now than what they were probably doing before, where you were looking for that breakout age. But it's changing now, where these quarterbacks are staying one more year. They're staying longer in the systems to develop, because they're seeing what's happening in the NFL, that these quarterbacks are getting tossed to the side. I mean, Kenny Pickett, Will Levis, you name it. They're just not getting the development they need. And so I think there's some incentive for these quarterbacks, especially with NIL, to go back to college again one more year and refine their skills. He really flourishes in a play action system. So basically 43% of the snaps in 2024 were all in play action. Some of the issues that we see, though, is his injury history, his age, the pressure performance. So really, Shuck's mechanics really falter under pressure, usually it led to a 42% completion rate, which was the second worst in the QB class, and errant throws when bailing from the pocket. So he often fades backwards and off, or throws off his back foot, which reduces his accuracy. And of course, at that point, again, we talked about it, lands in the hands of NFL defenders. So, you know,
Yeah.
I I really didn't even pay a lot of attention to Shuck in regards to like having him so high up as we're talking about right now. But then after around the combine, which he actually did really well, he had like a 9.7 RAS and was like 4.65 on the 40. So he's got the athleticism. But then they started considering him for the second round. It's like, oh, okay. I mean, I think he could be a decent starter if he gets the chance on your fantasy team. It's
Mhm.
just it's gonna be he's in this like group of quarterbacks we're talking about right now that might not even get a chance to start at all.
Yeah. Yeah, what I think is interesting, so the thing that popped in my head when you were talking about Chuck backing up Herbert is, and this brings me back to a guy we just talked about, and that is, do you know Justin Herbert's senior season, the first week of the year, he lost to a true freshman quarterback head to head in his first career start, and that quarterback was Bo
Yeah,
Nix. Bo Nix. So we saw a guy last year that played at the same time as Herbert that everybody said was too old, um, came out and
yeah,
smashed. Right. So, I think that speaks to what you were talking about sometimes these guys that stayed in college longer are ready to go and they can step right into a role. Penix was older as
yeah,
well, that they can step into a role and produce right away. But also you have guys like Hendon Hooker that people were kind of saying the same thing about. Maybe he's too old, and then he gets drafted in a situation where he's probably going to be a career backup at this
yeah,
point. So it really does come down to, is he going to get a chance? Is he going to get drafted to a place that has an established quarterback that's under contract and he's just a solid handcuff backup that you keep on the end of your bench and trade for a third as soon as he starts a game?
yeah,
Um, or is he a guy that actually can produce for you? And that's, I think we'll find out. But if he's a guy that goes in the second round and it's to a situation where there isn't like a super entrenched quarterback, very interesting potential prospect. And I think there's a chance that, and we've seen the potential, we've seen the upside, we've seen what he can do. But those injuries have just derailed him, and hopefully that doesn't follow him into the
yeah,
NFL.
yeah. But yeah, when we talk about the negatives, right? These are negatives that mostly the community is seeing. Again, injury history, age. The injury history, I can play away because I feel pretty confident with somebody coming from a fractured collarbone or uh, a
Yeah,
fractured fibula and a shoulder injury. They can be fine and have a fine career and might not
those aren't
even
ligament
injure it ever
issues, or
again,
yeah, yeah,
right? So people will play that away, and I'll be the guy that ends up buying because I always use this in regards to fantasy football and especially dynasty fantasy football that like there is no such thing as being injury prone. I mean, like we can try and say I think Christian McCaffrey is like a one
agree.
that like jumps out at us and we're like, oh well, actually he was pretty solid for solid, 3 straight years where he didn't have any injuries, and then of course the Achilles tendonitis happens and all this, and we're basically throwing that at again. But no, I'm when we play fantasy football, we're looking for upside. We're not looking to be safe. So take the risk. When you're looking at a
Yeah,
Tyler Shuck, you want that diamond in the rough. Maybe take him in the third or fourth round of your rookie drafts when it comes time that if he gets good enough draft capital, he's gonna be climbing up. So
yeah, yeah. My two favorite guys to take kind of late when I've been mocking quarterback wise are Tyler Shuck and Will Howard, who we're about to talk about. And I think both of those guys kind of offer the same. There's some upside there. They have shown a lot of maturity and leadership in college where you're like, okay, this guy could lead an NFL team if he gets a chance. So yeah, let's talk about Will Howard a little bit. So 6'4", 235 pounds. Um, he was at Kansas State for 4 years. So this is another older guy. He's 24 years old. Um, had a solid career at Kansas State. I remember watching him and thinking, man, this guy's solid. Good running quarterback, just bulldozes over people. There were some questions about like how good of a passer was he really. He never really had done for more than like, he was pretty consistently under 3,000 yards, but he did have 3,000 yards total yards and 33 touchdowns in 23. But all right, he's transferring to the Big Ten. He's at Ohio State. Like, is he just going to get destroyed by the Big Ten defenses? Not at all. 4,000 passing yards, 35 touchdowns. Um, Added seven more touchdowns on the ground. Honestly, he had a really incredible season. When I was going back, and I knew he had a good season, but I look back at the stats. I'm like, man, he really held his own with a lot of the top quarterbacks, and very underrated season for him. Now, of course, there's two sides to it. One, it's like you're playing against the tougher Big Ten defenses, you're playing against better competition, but also you've got some absolute athletes that you get to throw the ball to. I mean, you had Jeremiah Smith, you had Emeka Egbuka, you had, of course, those running backs, Henderson and Judkins, and so there's a lot of guys a lot of pro level guys that he was throwing the ball to. But the but the numbers are still very impressive regardless of who he's throwing it to. The rushing upside is a big piece of his game. He's a proven winner. He obviously took his team on a championship run. He's got a little bit like just when I'm watching highlights, not trying to make this comp, but I'm just saying I see a little bit of Josh Allen in this game. I don't think he's at that level of talent, but he's built. He's a big guy. He can run over people. He can throw it a long way. He's tough, short yardage. He can basically as a short yardage running back. Um, Looks really good on tape. He had a really rough combine. He didn't test out that well, and I think that'll hurt him a little bit. But to me, he's a guy that's like I think he'll probably end up being starting his career as a backup quarterback. But he's a guy I could see getting in there. If an injury happens or if he's behind somebody that doesn't perform well, and he could get in there and surprise people and be kind of like a Brock Purdy from a couple years ago, where it's like, man, this guy, we want this guy leading our team. This guy's he's a winner. He's a leader. He's tough. He's a guy that I think the players and fans would rally around if he became their quarterback. So I think there's some potential there as kind of a wild card option. And yeah, I think if he's a guy you get in the fourth round, take a shot on, I think he's a guy you can make a profit on if he ends up getting a chance to start at
Yeah,
one point.
yeah. I like Will Howard a lot. Even I beat a dead horse in the sense that he played for my rival, but um, yeah, it's just you want to discount people just because they have great weapons, and it's like, well, yeah, they just synthesized and made each other look even better, right? So Will Howard, I think, is going to be a quality NFL quarterback if he gets a chance, personally. Um,
You know who had great weapons last year? Jaden Daniels.
yeah,
I mean, look at that. Look, Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors and Jaden Daniels. I mean, they all were great. So I mean, there's no reason why all these guys can't be
right.
good NFL
Yeah,
players.
it's a stupid argument. Well, who's still getting them the ball?
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna talk about a guy that like I actually didn't know too much. I actually that's a lie. There was one thing that I did know about him, Riley Leonard. Um, and there was a game against Clemson a couple years ago, and he was playing for Duke, where he just shocked the world, beating number ninth ranked Duke, Clemson, and he's the hero of the school. Like you're seeing all these reports coming out the next day that like he had like a fine or like a project that was due and he didn't do it on time because he was too busy winning games for Duke, and the professor denied him the ability to like extend the project. And but it was just a funny story, and it's just a likable kid. um so senior quarterback from Notre Dame, spent three of his first 4 years at Duke, and it had a real. He was a three-star recruit coming out of high school. And then once he committed to Duke, he quickly showcased his potential with a breakout his sophomore season. So that 2022 season, he'd go on to throw 2967 pass yards, 20 touchdowns, and six interceptions. He would add an additional 699 rush yards and 13 rush TDs. It would be named Duke's MVP and offensive MVP. And then you bring up, that 2023 season again, where that's the year that he beat Clemson, and then basically translated to, actually included basically mostly his Notre time at Notre Dame, and then would transfer.
Didn't he get hurt Didn't he get hurt in the
I
middle of that
think he
season?
only ended up
Like
playing.
against, I believe against Notre Dame.
Yes, I believe that he only played like
Mhm.
7 or 8 games that season. So
Yeah, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, I think when he was at Duke, he got hurt playing against Notre Dame,
that's crazy.
and then the next year was playing for Notre
Um,
Dame.
so in his senior season, he would transfer to Notre Dame. He would go on to pass for 2,606 yards, 19 touchdowns, and interceptions, and then would put another 866 rush yards and 16 rush touchdowns.
Yeah,
That's insane. The rushing upside is
it is.
nuts. So we're talking about Jalen Milrow, who showcases it in the SEC and is looking great, and then you're talking about a guy like Riley Leonard, who just is doing it casually on a Duke team back in
Yeah,
2022, and then this last season with Notre Dame, and of course he would
that's 100 more yards than
right.
Milrow.
So
That's 100 more yards
and
than
you know
Milrow
what?
Thomas.
It's
Yeah,
chalk to me is the yards. I mean, touchdowns situational,
yeah,
like right, like you could have very
yeah,
very
yeah.
little rush yards and you're running it on the goal line and hey, we stopped you at the one. Let's get Jalen Hurts out there and do the tush push. I mean, hey, Jalen Milrow would love that. Um, but
Yeah,
but Riley Leonard would lead his team to the national title game against Ohio State. Of course, lose the game, but he's a tough guy. He's a leader
that first drive
on
though, that first drive.
yes, right? No, I
Yeah,
you know me, I really wanted Notre Dame to win that, even though that was also a tough choice.
yeah,
But the guy has like crazy off the charts athleticism and mobility. So he was a track star in high school, ran a 4.52 in the 40 in the combine. He's not lacking in functional athleticism or mobility at all. And actually was graded pretty highly based off his rushing game. The PFF was rated at 82.8, which was third amongst drafts capital eligible QBs. I'm sure that Jalen Milrow is somewhere in that top three as well. He also ran in 14 touchdowns from the red zone. He excels in designed runs, mostly sweeps and RPO, and can evade pressure to create in second chance plays. He's a bigger guy. He's 6'4", 216, built like a prototypical quarterback. And he's known for his arm strength and his ability to layer the ball into tight windows. He flashes anticipation on intermediate routes and can deliver accurate touch passes to a receiver outside the numbers. So he can do it. It's just we had a little bit of this like blip because of the 2023 season, and he transferred. There's definitely some issues in his game. I think the thing is his footwork it can be erratic, especially under pressure. Usually, was what leads to inaccurate passes from him. Like Ewers, he also bails from a clean pocket under pressure and also invites pressure holding onto the ball too long. He tends to not let a play develop fully, targeting usually his first read, just like we talked about with some of those other guys. And his deep ball accuracy is a question mark.
yeah.
It's
Needs to be a common issue.
what's that, Austin? You there?
I said it seems to be a common issue with the guys in this class.
Oh yeah, for sure. There was concern of injury history
Yeah,
with
can you
limiting
hear
his
me?
junior season to 7 starts. He had a high ankle sprain and then sustained a stress fracture in his ankle last season and had to have 2 surgeries for repair. So, um, I think with the high ankle sprain, that ended up being the injury that you were talking about during the Notre Dame game. There is a little bit of a repeat that can happen. I think that was the concern with Saquon Barkley a couple of years ago, where those ligaments do not tighten back up, right? It's all about the rehab. And obviously for Saquon Barkley, he's a beast. He went back and made it happen. So there is definitely still a concern there for those kind of injuries. But I think Riley Leonard, you talk about all those things, he's probably going to be an early day 3 guy. I don't see it happening for him where he's going to get called any earlier than that. And right now, the comps that I have for him are
Yeah,
Ryan Tannehill and Daniel Jones. Just based off of, again, the rushing upside for Daniel Jones. And Ryan Tannehill
yeah,
just kind of being that similar type of player with play action and RPO and different things like that. So I that's kind of where I see Riley Leonard at this point.
Yeah, I like Riley Leonard too. I think there's a lot to like about him. He seems to be like a proven leader. His senior season was definitely a step up for him. Like that last year at Notre Dame, I think he stood out. He won a couple big games in the playoffs, beating Georgia and Penn State to get to the championship game. And obviously that first possession of the championship game, they ran it right down their throats. He was running over guys, got that touchdown. And you're like, are they going to be able to do this? Um, Obviously, Ohio State ended up being bigger, faster, stronger, getting it done. But I think he showed that he has the toughness and the potential to go against the toughest competition and hang with them. So he's a guy that I think he'll probably be, like you said, day three. I mean, potentially he could end up being an undrafted free agent, but I would hope that he ends up going day three.
Yeah.
But either way, he could be a guy that you take at the very end of your rookie drafts, or even be a guy you grab off waivers and stick on the end of your bench, and hope he ends up getting a start or two.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I think that's kind of where I'm at with Leonard as well. But even if he ends up as an undrafted free agent and ends up on the end of your bench, you're taking a shot that he could potentially be a guy who has good rushing upside and is a good leader on the football field, that he could be in the NFL hopefully for some years and maybe make something happen
Hmm.
fantasy wise. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that concludes our 8 guys that we wanted to talk about, Austin. Did you have any additional comments towards like rookie QBs? Next we're gonna get started on the rookie tight ends that's gonna be airing on Wednesday. But any concluding thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a couple other guys we didn't mention. Like we talked Kyle McCord, Dylan Gabriel, a couple other potential guys. It just kind of depends on if they get good landing spots. There could be potential for those guys too. I really think, besides Cam Ward, there's a lot of question marks. I think Shador, if he ends up going top 10, and Dart, if he ends up going in the first round, seem like pretty safe bets. But then below that, it's like it really is anybody's game. If somebody like really likes Kyle McCord, if somebody really likes Quinn Ewers and gets him in the second or third round, maybe they leapfrog over all these other guys. It's really kind of hard to say how it's going to play out. It does seem like a thinner quarterback class. Um, but that doesn't mean there's not going to be a whole bunch of guys get drafted day three that end up as backup quarterbacks. And you know how it is in the NFL. There's such a quarterbacks get hurt all the time, and maybe one or two of these guys steps in, gets an opportunity, and then you know runs with it, and is a guy that's a huge value. It tends, like when I see mocks, I tend to see guys after the second round. Basically, you take Ward, you take Sanders, you take Dart, and even Milrow, and then it's like nobody wants to take a quarterback, but there's gonna be a couple guys that are probably good values, and it'll just be interesting to see who they are.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I think Milrose. I told you early on, like the big question mark.
Yeah.
Jackson Dart's going to be a question mark as far as what his career looks like. I have no doubt that he's going to be a first round quarterback this season out of
Hmm.
pure necessity. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
going to be a real interesting time, especially Thursday night, to see who sneaks into the first round, and even
Yeah.
Friday, who sneaks into day two. So, um,
Yeah. You think about the Giants and the Browns at the top of the second. Do the Giants, if the Giants really, let's say they really like Milrow, do they say, all right, we got to trade ahead of the Browns and get back into the first to get Milrow? Does that happen? Or the Browns say, oh, the Giants are trying to trade ahead, we'll trade ahead first?
yeah,
Does that happen at the back of the first? It'll be interesting.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So, I'm, we're going to be pretty active over the next week with, like I was kind of saying earlier, with the live on Discord on Thursday night. People are probably just going to be hitting us up with all kinds of questions in regards to where do these rookie picks
Yeah.
go, like what do trades look like, and all of those things are just going to be answered by the end of this weekend, and
It's
it's gonna be a
yeah,
sweet
it's
feeling.
all going to change. Yeah.
So, Austin, well, I'm going to catch you on the next one. We're going to be talking about tight
Yep.
ends. Have a good night, brother.
Sounds good. You too. Yeah.
Okay. So